Hello, good evening. I'm just waiting for some of you to join us. Who am I going to invite to join? That's the question. Let me know when you arrive. Let me know that you're here. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you are. And happy World Book Day. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so we're just waiting for Kate to join us. Good evening. Hey girl, how are you? I'm all right. I have not seen your name pop up in some time. How are you doing? Pop me an email. So it's World Book Day today, and next week on the 8th it is International Women's Day. And so I wanted to do something different. I know that everybody everywhere who's kind of interested in books and interested in empowering women will be doing stuff on this date, but I wanted to dedicate the month to women who write books. So as some of you will know, I'm Annika Spalding, and I've written a few books actually over the years, and I've won a couple of awards, and it's kind of my area, but I didn't want to make it about, I didn't want to make this month all about me and my work. Actually, what I wanted to do was highlight other writers, and there are so many incredible women who write books across the UK, across the world, but across the UK, and some that I've come into contact with. And yeah, so that's why I wanted to do women who writes books. Now, a few years ago, I used to have an event called So You Want to Write a Book, and I'd have two authors on who would talk about their writing journey, right? They'd talk about the process of writing their book. I've just lost my train of thought. and that's what they used to do. But there would be people in the audience who were writing books, who were interested, they were asked questions, and it was so valuable, because I find when you write a book, people will always ask you about what you've written, but there are a few questions that are centered around why you wrote it, what inspired you, how you got started. And I know as an author, that's something that I always want to talk about. So we are just waiting for our lovely Kate to send me a request to join. What happened? And we'll get on this live. So let me know who's in the room. Let me know if anyone here has written a book, is writing a book, and see if we can get Kate to join. Yeah, if you press along the bottom, you should have something there that invites you to send me a request to join, to go live. We'll get there. No, you should do it on, I don't know if you can do it on a computer. If you've got your phone, that will work. I've never done it with anyone on computer. Okay, don't worry. We'll get there, be worth the wait. So those of you watching, Kate's going to be joining us in a few minutes, but let me know in the comments who you are, how you're doing, and if you're somebody who's thought about writing a book. Actually, I'd love to know. So throughout the live, what we are going to do is I'm going to ask Kate a number of questions, and then at the end I'll open up the floor for discussion and invite some of you to ask some questions. Okay, and ask Kate some questions. So yeah, Instagram Live, it's only on your phone. Yeah, this is it. This is technology, but we will not be beaten. And actually, everybody who is watching, Aurea, I'm speaking to on Saturday morning between 11 and 12. So we have got lots of opportunities throughout the month on Saturday mornings and on Thursday evenings where I'll be talking to writers. Okay, I'll be talking to women who've written books, and I think it's so important that I do this, simply because we always think, I'm going to wait until I have time to write a book, but the time will never come. You've always got something going on in your life. And I know that as a woman, and as a mother, as someone who wears many different hats, I've had to fit in writing books around all of that. And I'm just really interested in sharing with you and inviting other women to talk about how they've managed it too. Okay, I think we're going to be going live any minute now. Thank you everybody for joining as well. It has been such a long time, I feel, since I've done a live, that I thought, actually, what am I doing, throwing myself into doing all these Instagram live videos across the whole of March? But it's going to be so worth it. It's going to be so worth it. Okay, Kate, how are you getting on? Don't worry. And actually, a question I can ask you all. Is anyone here writing a book or thinking about writing a book? Let me know. Talk to me. Are you thinking about writing a book? Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll get there. Okay, so something that I can talk to you guys about, or to you gals about, is earlier I put out a post that was all around how to support authors, right? How to support authors, because I think we need to just put it out there to let you know how you can help us. And there are some items on there that apply to us all, whether we are independent, whether we are traditionally published. There are a number of different ways to support authors. Buki says one day we all have stories. Oh yes, and some of us have multiple books in us. Definitely thought about it, have the idea. It's just having time to write. This is it. And I know, like, the ideal for so many of us is that we'll have like a spare afternoon every week and we'll do our writing then. But actually, I know, maybe I can only speak for myself, but I know sometimes books are written in the short moments that you get in every day. So you'll have a few 10 minutes here and a few 10 minutes there. But what was I talking about? Yes, so I put out a post earlier that is talk, as we're waiting for Kate to join us, I put out a post earlier that talks about supporting authors, whether you are an independent author or self-published, independent or self-published author or traditionally published. And I just want to let you all know that when you send us an email or send us a message or leave a comment telling us that you really enjoyed reading our work, it makes us feel really good. When you sign up to our newsletters and reply back to us about something that we've said, it makes us feel awesome. And I don't know about anybody else, but my mailing list I've had for a good few years now, and it's a decent size. And I always check to see who opens it, because it tells you on there for the analytics, and the same names always pop up, and it's just really humbling, and to know that there are people that really love the way that you do your creativity and the way that you do things. And I'm just letting you know there's lots of ways that you can support an author that doesn't involve you parting with money, just energy, but that energy can mean the world. Okay, how are we getting on, Kate? Let us know. And let me know, what are you all reading at the moment? I've been reading The Body Keeps Score. Have I got it to hand? Yeah. No, I haven't. Have I? Oh no, I haven't got it to hand. Have I? No, I've been reading The Body Keeps Score, and it's quite a heavy read actually. I'm really slow with it. I'm wondering if I should read a fiction alongside it. Are we almost there? And I think at this point as well, yeah, she's here. Yay! So you should be along the bottom. They should give you an option to send me a request to go live with me. Hope you're all ready with your questions. How are we getting on? So along the bottom of the screen, there we go. Almost there. So you went to the question mark. There should be like a little camera looking icon. So I've got your question next to your comments. Hi Rochelle, thanks for joining us. Kels says, I need to read more. Do you have a book club? I don't have a book club. I don't. What kind of books do you read, Kels? I love the idea of a book. Oh, no camera on your phone. Shall we do a Zoom? Would everybody be up for joining a Zoom? Or is there no camera along the bottom? Hold on. We will sort this out. If you click on, don't worry. I'm trying to help you. I've got my other phone here. I think also at this point, when we've all been online and using more digital stuff, we're just so much more used to when there are hiccups. But we are having some good conversation at the moment already, talking about books. Fiction is preferable. I love an escape, okay? Do you know a book I was recommended? I haven't started it yet. Let me get that for you. This one. Which is A Ghost in the Throat. I don't know how it is yet, but I know Kate's written fiction one. Oh, she's come through. Right, everyone get ready. Get ready. Yes. Has it come through? We're live. Accept. Yay!
Oh, Annika, so very sorry. Whoops.
Don't worry.
Just
Don't worry.
unbelievably awful timing that was. Sorry, I'm here.
But you know what? We made it work, and it just meant that we got to talk a little bit about people wanting to write books and the type of books they're reading, and we made it. And you look amazing.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you did. It wasn't totally a complete space, but no, my phone died, and of course I got prepared in every way apart from phone battery. So technology.
You're here now. Thank you so much for joining us, Kate. So I'm going to keep an eye on the comments, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and then at the end we'll go through all the questions, and I'll throw them at you, and then you'll answer them from the audience. But tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're based.
Right, I'm a fiction writer. I also ghostwrite biographies, so that's my sort of day job, as it were. And I live in southeast London with my daughter and 3 very demanding dogs.
Big family. So, when and why did you start writing? What was your beginning to that?
Yeah, well, it's always I'm sure lots of people relate to this, and I'm what I've read about you, you will as well. But I think always for writers, there's an element of some trauma, tragedy, no matter how mild it is. But I think there comes a point where either you're overtly sensitive or you've got a complex inner landscape that you're finding absolutely nobody around you gets. And I remember quite young, actually, reading Graham Greene's Ways of Escape.
Okay.
And thinking, there are ways out of this. There are ways to kind of, sort of deal with such complexity in one's psyche, as it were. So,
Oh, you're frozen. Is Kate frozen for anyone else? Let me know. Is it me? Guys, it's almost like it's Mercury retrograde, but it's not. So I'm hoping Kate will join us shortly. I'm hoping that it's not me who's frozen. Oh, yeah, okay, so it's not me. Hopefully she'll join us. She did say that her battery had died. But we will not be stopped. We will not be stopped because I know she's got such interesting stuff to talk to us about, especially as she writes fiction, but also in her day job, she writes autobiographies. So we just need to get online in the heart of it. Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'm making a good point, and there is that thing about writing is our escape. You know, if you are somebody who's just written as a way to kind of process your feelings and your thoughts and your experiences, you know, it does take you to a completely different place. It's quite therapeutic. So she was making that really great point, and then technology interrupted us, which is very rude, but she'll join us. There she is, she's back. Let's have a look. Yeah, let's get you back on. Welcome back.
I'm trying hard not to be your worst interviewee ever here. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry.
The chart wasn't working.
You're sharing such gems that Instagram cannot handle it. You know, it's so good what you're telling us. So you just talked about escapism and writing to kind of escape trauma.
Yeah, yeah. I do think that I always remember there was a line in, you perhaps not the generation will remember this so much, but there was a movie with Jack Nicholson called As Good as It Gets. And he's a kind of neurotic writer, you know, fully OCD'd up and everything else. And they sort of go on this long car journey. I think it's Helen Hunt, and I can't remember the other actor. And they say, let's talk about our childhoods. And he just turns to her and says, well, mine was full of picnics and sunny days or something like that. And you just sort of know that there's a bit more to it, perhaps, than that. And I think that's probably true for most writers. I'd be very surprised if, you know, you have an idyllic life and then you come to writing. But yeah, I guess it's possible. But it's a good medium for sorting your life philosophies and what's lurking in the unconscious, what you know, what you can't put into words has a better way sometimes coming out as images.
Yes.
And I think it's a good healing tool as well.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, I know you mentioned earlier that you prefer to write fiction, but also you write biographies in like your day job, let's say. Yeah. So what inspires your writing now? Like what moves you?
Good question. I would say I'm sort of always on the side of the underdog. So it's the people who sort of slip through the cracks of life. They're the people that interest me. Not, you know, not the stereotypical normal person, and if there is such a thing, but it's always the ones that, you know, are surprising. You've got a story, you know, which is totally unexpected. And I find this actually a lot with ghostwriting biographies. You know, it's often the sort of people who are very humble, sort of, you know, getting on with their life, and then they've got these massive, great events that have happened, and you think, how did you get through that? But they're the people that interest me. So writing about those types of people, you know, people who think slightly differently.
You've written a book, which is why we're here. I've got your press release and I've ordered your book. Actually, it didn't come on time, but I read the back of it and it sounds amazing. Sounds like the perfect way for me to escape anyway. So tell us all about your book.
Yeah, well, it's again, he's not so much the underdog, Jeremiah Good. He is a troubled soul who's had a trauma in his childhood, and he's got a very overbearing father who's a physician who, as this is set in Georgian London, so that's 17th century, but his father is very overbearing. He wants his son to be a physician because, you know, that's how it was for fathers then. You passed on a trade and you did as your parents expected and, you know, were pretty invisible otherwise. But he's a sensitive soul. He's had this troubling event and he's commune with nature. You know, he feels very at home in nature, in the forests with flowers. You know, there's a sort of energy around it for him. And what he finds is he can experience another's pain or illness within his body, which gives him obviously a sort of added advantage into healing people. And he leaves his home, his comfortable home, and sets up shop in St. Giles in London, which nowadays is a, you know, hugely expensive area, part of Covent Garden, and you know, we get a one-bedroom flat for sort of £1 million. But in those days, it was extremely poverty-ridden, and it was, people live like rats. There's no other way to describe it. You know, just, you know, dozens of people sort of in one room, and you know, it was a struggle. Lot of Irish in the area at the time. And anyway, this is where he goes, and it's an area called Neal's Yard. And if people are sort of familiar with London, it's an area in Covent Garden it's got a sort of mystical, and it sounds a bit romantic, but mystical energy to it. And even now has healing, has a Neal's Yard apothecary shop there. And it's always, for 500 years, been known as an area of sort of the occult or healing, that kind of thing, sort of mystical type area. So he sets up his shop here, and he sets about, he's an apothecary, he's trained under somebody he knows, sets up his shop, and he sets to work healing the area, the district. But of course, you know, there's no money to be made. He gets himself in debt. He's feeling everyone's pain, and you know, it's hard for him. It's really hard, and he's on his own, and he's just struggling alone. And he's given an opportunity to heal a sick, very wealthy old lady. And along this journey, he discovers that actually what's not necessarily, you know, as with most, it's barely money alone that satisfies people. You know, as human beings, we require a little more. And he realizes he's very lacking in love, and basically falls in love with this woman known as the Dark Angel. And she is quite mysterious. She's very, you know, sort of progressive for her time. She doesn't wear a corset, you know, she sort of does her own thing, rides horses, you know, with her legs, you know, how we ride horses now, which again, you know, women didn't do. So she's intriguing to him, and he's not afraid of her, as a lot of men were at the time. You know, she would have most definitely be branded a witch. And she came from an area in Somerset where they had a lot of witch hunts actually at the time. So, you know, he's intrigued, and he falls in love, and sort of the love saves him. It holds up a mirror, as I believe love does, to one's own imperfections. But at the same time, it's his get out of jail free card as well, which I won't spoil for people who want to read the story.
Sounds so good. I can't wait to start reading, and I hope everybody watching has gone on to Amazon and ordered all Waterstones, because it sounds good. And I want to try reading. I know that when I've read the book, I want to talk to people about it. So I'm hoping people watching do that. But thanks for telling us about this amazing book. And it sounds like you did all your research about it. So, and I know you have to with historical fiction anyway, so it makes sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. There's a lot of research. I think research is really. There are so many people who know about history, in England especially. So you've got to get the facts right. You know, without it, it's not going to convince, I don't think. And you know, we live in very different times to how they lived then. You know, it's hard to imagine. The level of consciousness was utterly different. You know, so it requires, you know, a generous amount of imagination, but you've also got to put everything in context. So in the 17th century, you know, you'd be fined every week if you didn't go to church. You know, that was a must on a Sunday. So for people not to believe in God, it wouldn't have happened then. You know, I actually had to write a fiction book for a client instead of a biography. She wanted a fiction book set in this period, and she said, no, I don't think this character would have believed in God. And I said, everybody, it would have been a given almost. So there are big differences, but I think thorough research makes a huge difference.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay. So you've written your book. How did you make time to write it, especially around your other commitments, everything else that you've got going on? How did you find time to write it?
Yeah, well, that's always the question, which you know, it's the $1 million question, isn't it? It really is a matter of putting your writing first. There is just no other way. I'm not a believer in you know, the law of attraction and all of that. You imagine your life as a writer in the future. It's wonderfully romantic, but I don't think there's an enormous amount of truth in it. Sorry, somebody at my door. It's all happening. And I think that you've got to just put in the work. It's that simple. And you have to say, right, I'm going to sacrifice something, be it friends, be it your house work, you know, be it, you know, I've got a daughter, so unfortunately you can't sacrifice that. But you can't, there's other things you've got to let go. And I think you've got to work out what your sacrifice is. And I'd say that's pretty important. When I wrote it, it took me 2 years, but I made an effort at getting to the computer by 9, literally keeping my bottom on the chair until 4 o'clock, except for loo breaks. That's essential. But I have to say, I'd eat at 9 and then I wouldn't eat till 4. And that was the only way I knew I could do it. But I'm sure that's, you know, not particularly healthy. But I think in my situation with a daughter, with other responsibilities, with dogs, and it was the only way to do it, actually. And
got the job done.
They got the job done, yeah. But it is about sacrifice. I think you're on a hiding to nothing. I think if you think you can just, you know, pen a novel, you know, in a few hours at the weekend, I don't know. I mean, people manage it. I'm hats off to them, but it's a hard one. I mean, I imagine you must have had that experience yourself and found it hard to carve out the time. But
Yeah.
You've got to give it priority, haven't you?
This is it, and you have to keep it. And I know with my first book, it took me 4 years on and off, but I'd started right before I had my first daughter. And so stealing moments. But then even now, I think, because you have to make a decision, isn't it? You have to make a decision. Where are you going to carve out time? What's got to go? So for me, if I was to write, I want to start writing a book again. If I was to start writing a book again now, okay, Annika. So we're not going to do Netflix. We're not going to do Netflix for a while.
Yeah.
Because that could be time spent, or we're not going to spend an hour scrolling through TikTok for a while, or we're going to get up a bit earlier. You know, we're going to get up have an hour before we start our day. And you have to, those are the sacrifices that you're talking about, isn't it? If you want to do something different, you've got to do something different.
That's it, exactly. Well put. I think for me, I can't do this getting up at 4:35. It's just not in me. And even working late isn't in me. So I'm quite boring in that I've got these few hours in the day and I need to use them. But yeah, it was a balance, because obviously I'm ghostwriting biography, so I had a minimal time for that at the time. But yeah, the priority has to be your writing, and the fact is that everything is still there. You might have to pick up the pieces of your life at the end of it, but the important stuff, you know, it comes to the surface, doesn't it? And actually, you know, if you've not got that much time for friends and family, it really shows you who counts and who's still there at the end of the journey.
Which quite nicely to my next question for you, actually. So what has writing your book taught you about yourself?
Well, interestingly enough, my first book was non-fiction, and it was on heart disease and stroke. So I have a science degree, which I'm enormously grateful for, actually, because I went on to do a few postgrads as well in that. And I've subsequently had quite a serious health condition. So it's allowed me to sort of, you know, help myself, as it were. But I think, sorry, my daughter's got a puppy, it's attacking my fingers. I think that it was good for me because I've got a science degree, and then I went on to do a master's in creative writing at Goldsmiths, where I was sort of slightly out of my depth initially because I was the only non-English student there. So, I mean, non-English graduate. So what this book enabled me to do was combine the sort of knowledge I've got from the sciences, this sort of, medicine and things, with my first degree, I was cutting up bodies and things. So it's not that far removed from what Jeremiah was doing in the book. And so I think what encouraged me was sort of getting a message out about healing, that it's possible. And I suppose in some ways, because in Georgian London, you had physicians. So if you were rich, you'd pay for a physician and he would come and heal you, but he wouldn't really heal you. He'd sort of throw leeches all over your body, let blood from your arm, and then sort of say, okay, well, here's my massive bill at the end of it. And it would be a lot of sort of bedside manner.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what Jeremiah is doing in the book, he's an apothecary, so he's using herbs and plants, and these things actually heal.
Mm.
And I still have strong beliefs about that even now, that there's a lot of medication that's necessary for acute symptoms, but I think actually nature knows best. Nature always knows best. So it was just a chance to combine that. And I think my overarching aim was to entertain and to offer that escape, which I'd had, all my life with books. It was a sort of, not saying corny and cliched, a paying it back kind of thing. But my aim was always to entertain, not to preach the information. But I'm still of the belief that, that's true, that herbs and things are important to healing.
Absolutely beautiful that is that even though you've written your fiction book, you've still weaved parts of you in it. So it's fiction, but it's some of your truth and what you know and believe to be true in there. I think that's gorgeous.
I hope so. I really hope so. And I think that what's interesting, actually, our history in England went a bit strange in that it wasn't GPs, you would have thought, came from the strand of physicians. So you would have thought eventually the physicians would have ended up as GPs, but it wasn't the case. So what happened just after Jeremiah, the story set 1741. I think it's roughly 1750s, I'm not sure precisely, but around that time, that the government started saying apothecaries could give medicine for free to the poor. So whether there was some arrangement where they'd get money from the government, I don't know. But it was actually apothecaries that then went on to become GPs.
Ooh.
So interesting. So historically, if that strand had stayed, we'd all be, I don't know, on herbs and, not taking Prozac and painkillers, But it was just an interesting thread, which I hadn't realised before, that originally medicine was actually probably a little bit better than it was today in some ways.
So there you go, watching. Now you know something new, and I didn't know that, and I love that actually. So you've touched on a little bit about how you want what you want people to get from your writing. You want them to be entertained and have that sense of escapism.
Yes.
To us more about that, and have you had that confirmed? Because I know sometimes we write something, we put it out, we hope for the best, we hope nobody hates it, but have you had feedback that tells you that you've done exactly what you set out to do?
I hope so. I mean, obviously the aim is always to reach a wider audience, but I think the feedback I've got is, so on the journey of this book, I was very lucky to speak with a literary agent from Curtis Brown, called Felicity Blunt, who happens to be Emily Blunt's sister. And she has Pulitzer Prize winners on her books. I mean, she's pretty big, and I'm embarrassed to say I turned her down. And she said that the book is so evocative. I genuinely feel I'm in 17th century London. Rudy.
Wow.
And that for me was probably one of the biggest compliments. Emma Darwin, who is Charles Darwin's great granddaughter, I think, she's read it, and she did a sort of, I don't know what they call it, a sort of a tag on the front cover of the book saying she really liked it. And I think given, you know, her sort of place in history, that meant an enormous amount to me. Yeah, so I think the feedback is has been quite nice, quite good. Yeah. Obviously, I always want more, but I think people get something out of the healing, and every plant and herb mentioned in there is a real, you know, it's a real. It really was used for healing back then. I resorted to, not resorted, but researched a lot of cull peppers. You know, sort of he was the first person to write a herbal book on you know, the healing power of plants. So I tapped into a lot of his stuff. So yeah, that's what I hope, and I think I've got, you know, fairly generous feedback so far. Yeah, I've been quite fortunate.
And may it continue, because it
May
sounds
it continue, yes.
like it's a good read in terms of the story, but actually it's educational indirectly as well, which I quite like that.
Hope so. Yeah, I hope so. And also there's a bit in there about, you know, how childhood trauma can impact your adult life quite seriously and in a debilitating way, which obviously back then, but it certainly wasn't recognised. And the other theme is really love and how that has the power to heal, which I'm a great believer in, you know. So I hope those messages come across.
I hope so. I'll let you know when I read it anyway. I'm big on reviews and leaving reviews as well. So yes, as soon as it arrives, I'm going to tag you. Everybody watching, if you've already read it, please do. Kate's book. But we've got a couple of more questions, really, and then it's, well, one more question, and it's over to our lovely audience. So I know that I've got people watching me who are thinking about what they've always wanted to do. And I'm just wondering if you have any words of wisdom, any advice that you can share with aspiring authors.
Oh yes, lots. I remember it goes back to self-belief. That's the most imperative part of writing, I think, because I don't really like to use this phrase, but I'm going to. You've got to have a bit of healthy narcissism. And I know that everywhere narcissism is just a bad thing, and I'm in agreement to that. But I listened to a podcast recently that said, actually just have that healthy, stick to the healthy side, which is, if I've got something to share, I've got to believe in it. And that for me is really what that means. Because if you don't, no one else is going to, quite frankly. But I would say there are definite, you've got to read. That's a given. You've got to read. But I think it gets to a point where the reading has been so much. I mean, if I'm writing fiction, I think I then read non-fiction, because you can oversaturate the brain, and it can also, you're sort of standing in the shadow of giants, as it were. And I think that's okay at the beginning. Everybody has that sense, you know, you'll replicate other writers, and that's good. I think that's part of the journey, and don't shy away from that, because it's part of finding your own voice. But read books about writing. So I was fortunate to be able to do a master's degree. If you're not, I don't think it's that much of a hindrance. There's a lot of literature, good literature out there. So I'd say Solstein, How to Grow a Novel. That's particularly good. Sorry?
Stephen King's On Writing, which is
Oh, absolutely. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many gems in there. And I really like his style of writing, that he does wing it a bit. I mean, for me, that's a bit too unnerving, as it were, but I always have an end image. I might not know the middle, but I kind of know where I'm going. So I think that's the important part for me. But yeah, I think reading around the subject. Margaret Atwood, she's written one, Negotiating with the Dead. I'm not sure if you've read it.
It's got one on writers and writing as well. It's just,
who's that by?
Margaret Atwood.
Oh, it is Margaret Atwood. Okay.
They are originally entitled Negotiating with the Dead.
Ah, okay. That's brilliant. It's a brilliant book, isn't it?
writing, so I'm also, I've got books about writing, so I can only like encourage you definitely say no. Books about writing are invaluable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, she speaks about sort of literally negotiating with the dead. It's interesting she changed the title actually, because I think that was a really spot on title, because it feels that's as if what you're doing, you are these well, for me anyway, historical fiction. I mean, I remember sort of chopping vegetables one night and feeling this character, Jeremiah Good, over my shoulders. I didn't mind too much. He's quite handsome and got nice eyes and things, but it was that palpable. So I think that you can. I mean, I've had a case. I've had a 2 or 3 times where I've written about something, and then found out that thing really happened, and I've not had any knowledge of it prior to that. So whether it's the collective unconscious, whether it's held in our DNA somehow, I think that's the slight mystical element of writing, which even somebody like Hilary Mantel speaks of. You are conversing with the past, and you've got a responsibility.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So I think for aspiring authors, believe if you've got a love of it, you've got to believe in yourself. But when you are writing, it's super important to lose yourself utterly. You must embody those characters. I'm sure you've had this experience as well, Annika. You've got to really let those characters live inside you. So you push out your ego. It's non-existent. You are a vessel through which they can communicate. And the romantic side of me likes to think that's coming from the collective, directly downloaded from the cloud of up there.
Well, I believe that. I think when you're writing and you're in the zone, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, yeah, it's your flow. It's coming from somewhere, isn't it? But it's believing in that. Don't question it. Just let yourself exist in that sort of energy. And people aspiring out there will be surprised what happens. And always mine deeper. So you might think you've got to the root cause of your character, but go that extra layer, because there's always something deeper within that's driving them, and you just need to get there. So sit down, ask your character questions, sit with them, write the questions, and you'll get the answers. It's a magical part of writing.
Okay, I'm going to throw a question to you that wasn't on the list that I sent you, but who do you think writes the story, you or the characters?
Oh, that's yeah.
Oh, you gone. Let me back.
No, someone's phoning. Sorry. Me or the characters? It's an interplay of both, I would say, because you come up with the characters, and that's often quite a logical exercise. You're setting about to write a book, and then it takes off. Then the characters have a life of their own, and you've got to honor that. They might. It's worth reading around the subject of archetypes. I think
Yeah.
I'm a sort of devotee of Jung, and I think he was a genius. He's for every writer, tap into Jung, because he's got a lot to offer. And I think if you can embody the archetypes, you'll see patterns, and people are familiar with those archetypes. So readers reading your work will expect a certain amount of
Mm.
characteristics to play out once they get the outline of your character. So I think that's important to pay attention to. Yeah, I mean, do you have that with your writing? Are you sort of letting your characters take over? I think it's a good thing. I do think it's a good thing.
I know that I've had an idea of this is what the story is going to be, and then you're writing, and the character does something, and and I'm just
Yeah.
but really curious. Okay, so what's going to happen now then? And I feel like sometimes we have a plan for our story, but the story will start to write itself.
Yes. Sorry.
I quite like that because it's quite organic and it's happened quite naturally and it's flowed rather than me sticking to what I said it was going to be about action. It kind of unfolded in its own way at its own pace, and I think that's
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah. And I think that's what, someone like Stephen King can't be wrong. I mean, in my humble opinion, and that's exactly what he does. So I think it requires a lot of faith in you getting there, but yeah, giving the characters freedom, and it probably plays in a bit to everyday life. You can't control life, can you? You can try, but you really can't. So I think it's perhaps the same with these characters in a novel, if you wish for them to appear realistic. It's an interplay of both.
Some brilliant words of wisdom and advice there. And I just want to say thank you just for being so open and honest and patient as well, while technology kind of got in the way.
Sorry.
So for everybody watching, Kate has shared so much with us, has answered my questions, and I'm going to read through your comments, but I want you to think about some questions that you have for Kate that you can post in the comments and we can go through, because we've got a little bit of time and I know that you're all really curious and really interested. So post them in the comments and let us know what you want to know. Do you know, actually, Kate, a comment that we've got here is from Aurea, who says, I'm not really into fiction, not much into fiction, but I'm interested in her book now.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, thank you, Aurea. I hope you get something out of it. Thank you.
So you sold it. You sold it. I love that. Oh, and someone else has said, I wouldn't normally pick up a historical book normally, but the storyline has intrigued me.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think the story is about redemption from love, and I think it's such a theme that's played out through history. That love will save the day, and it's there. It's a truism. It really is. So I think that's certainly what he got out of it, Jeremiah. But it was healing. It was healing as well.
We've got a comment where Jacqueline says, writing is definitely a healing tool. So we're all on the same
Yes.
here, which is awesome. Does anybody have any questions for our lovely Kate? Let me know. Put it in the comment below so I can, while she's live with us, I can answer them for you.
I hope I didn't put people off for the technical hitch. It's hard juggling everything, isn't it, sometimes? But anyway.
You did it. From Jacqueline, she says, do you have scope for a sequel? Ooh.
Ah, that's interesting. Well, going back to Felicity Blunt, who I don't think I'll ever forget, turning her down, but she said, and this was the one thing that I have to say put me off, because she wanted to see Jeremiah being the king's doctor in the next sequence. And I couldn't agree to it, because he's not a physician, he was an apothecary. So she had all this sort of vision, and I think it probably would have been quite good. But I had read a book a number of years ago like that. I can't remember the writer's name, but so I had a sort of vision of him moreover going to Paris or Versailles, mostly because I think that would just be far more romantic. So at the moment, no, but potentially in the future, yeah. I think at the moment I am writing some. It's very hard to have gone through lockdown without, as a writer, being in some way affected by that. So my next novel is really contemporary, and it's very dark, and I think that was really the only way my subconscious could find any release at the time. So but no, in the future, yeah. So thanks for the question, and I think Jeremiah still lives within my heart, so yeah.
Watch this space.
Still beyond the realm, yes.
Okay, so Charlie says, can you remind me of the book title, please?
Sure, it's called The Angel and the Apothecary. The Angel and the Apothecary. And it's on Waterstones, and it's on amazon.co.uk, amazon.com, and yeah, it's just local bookshops. Yeah, so hopefully you can find it.
Michelle says, so what do you think of the common advice to writers to write what you know?
Oh yeah, very good. I would say yes, that's very, very helpful, but it's dependent on your personality. So for me, it was helpful initially to have something that I know about, which was health, which was healing, for my first degree. And it gave me a bit of security. But I think that if you're a good writer or you're a keen writer, you can write about anything. It's your imagination, and it's dependent on your the ability of your imagination. Um, I think you can pass on information, but you can likewise absorb information to pass on. So it's whatever medium works best for you, I guess, and that's perhaps trial and error. But it also depends what if you've got quite a boring life. If you you're sort of, I don't know. I suppose even the boring lives aren't boring, are they? Even if it's a terribly tedious job, there'll be sides of it that nobody knows about. And whatever world you delve into, you're going to be surprised because each, is a microcosm. I was at Tesco's the other night, and I learned that the manager's been there 23 years, and the girl who works there can't believe his dedication to his job. And he's literally a man that greets you when you walk in the door. So, it doesn't matter, does it? And I think we're seeing this on Netflix now. We're seeing serials about supermarkets or about, because every sort of microcosm has its drama, has its trials, its tribulations, its trauma, because it's just the human experience. We can't escape it, no matter if you're the Queen of England. She's had divorces, she's had disasters. So I think, yeah, write what you know, as long as you're engaged with what you're writing about and you're excited by it, because if you're not, you won't last the journey. You've got to find the excitement in what you're doing. So I'd say more importantly is that you're interested in it. It doesn't matter the knowledge, you can always gain that. We've got the British Library, which is the most unbelievable resource in the whole world. We're so lucky to have that. You can find out anything about everything there. So yeah.
Octavia just said, so true. I guess there is a market for absolutely everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even if you're a road sweep, I don't think people know about road sweeps. Write a book about it. There'll be people out there dying to know what that's like, whatever it is, whatever. It's the human experience, and it's everybody's is unique, and everybody's has something to give and offer.
Got another question. Have you, and I like this question actually, have you any thoughts of turning your book into a screenplay?
Well, I didn't, to be honest, but when I went to meet an agent, he called in his script editor, and he said, "This is a BBC miniseries."
Ooh.
And well, no, this was the part that threw me. They said Martin Clunes should play Jeremiah. Jeremiah Good. Now, Jeremiah has got dark curly hair, piercing blue eyes. He's phenomenally handsome. Martin Clunes, very good actor, but I couldn't see it. So it's funny. It was, for me, it was a moment of, it really is. Your novel is really gets tied up in someone's imagination and processed and comes out utterly different. So I would absolutely love it. But then I suppose I've got no say in what happens thereafter, and I suppose that's part of that journey, is that. But yeah, no, good question. Would love it. So any script writers out there, feel free to step in.
You raised a very valid point about really knowing your character, and if that was to translate into screen, it would need to match. Because I know that I read P.S. I Love You years ago, loved the book, and then the movie came out, and I turned it off within the first 15 minutes because it wasn't based in. I was like, that's not right. That's not how it is in the book. And so, because I'd read the book first, I couldn't bring myself away from it. It was just so wrong. And I find I do find, you know, if you read a book and there's a film or there's a series from it, if you know the book well and you enjoy the story, you're fact finding, aren't you? You're looking for, okay, that's not quite right, or so. I
Yeah,
mean,
your imagination is always better, I think.
yeah,
It's always better. I have to say, recently I was surprised by Life of Pi because I've read the book, the movie, and the theatre, and all three equally good, which is astonishing. I don't think that happens very often. I mean, Harry Potter, but I don't think the play translated so well, did it? But it's
wanted to.
a rare thing. But yeah, I think the imagination is always best, though. Your personal imagination. Yeah.
Right, I think that brings us to the end of our live. Thank you so much for being an amazing guest. You were so good, and I know that we had some trouble getting on, but
Yes.
you were more than well worth the wait for everything that you've shared.
Oh, bless. Thank you. That's lovely. Well, it's been lovely being here, Annika, and really thank you for inviting me. And yeah, for future, I will be sure to check my battery. But yeah, technology, eh? But thank you.
It didn't defeat us. And thank you everybody for watching and for listening and asking Kate questions. And please do, after I've edited this video on my grid, please do share it. Tag any other writers that you know, tag readers actually, because her book does sound amazing. And as I've said, I've ordered it, and I would love to see some of you ordering it as well, and just letting her know how great that was. But thank you, and
Thank you so much, Annika. Thank you. Thank
have a good
you. Have a lovely evening. Thanks. Bye.
day.
Bye.